Well, it's that old saying, isn't it? You can sell ice to an Eskimo and all of that kind of stuff. But that's not really what makes a great agent.
Consultation.
Yeah.
So you talk about listening as the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. And really, if you're on a consultation with either a buyer or a seller, you really want to spend 20% of the time talking, and you want them to be talking 80% of the time. And I think that you can utilize that when you're looking at consultation with potentially a buyer or a seller. And I think if you spend 20% of the time talking and they spend 80% of the time talking, you'll find out much more about them and what their needs are and how you can help them. If you do the reverse of that, you're just forcing what you think is right and what your narrative is into their circumstances. And it's all about asking the right questions, totally. Understanding, identifying their needs, and then working out where you can guide them and navigate them through the process. And I come back to the point that you made about the commission. And I think we've lost our way a little bit where, agents have got very greedy. Now, I'm all for charging the right fee.
Agreed.
And I think we can be perceived as expensive by some.
Yeah.
I think we're really good value for money, and I insist upon 2 to 2.5% subject to the circumstances, which in some parts of the world where Fine and Country represent their sellers, it can be as much as 10%. So in the UK, we pay a lot less. But I would rather have 5 instructions at 2% than 10 at 1%, because I'll be far more attentive. I'll be far more engaged. I'll be far more available for 5 sellers than I ever can be for 10.
Yeah.
I'll do a better job, and I've got a better chance of getting them the result that they need. So it's not all about commission. It's about the service that you deliver and making sure that you fulfill your obligations and do the best possible job. And I think our industry has been dumbed down to the lowest common denominator. And, there are a lot of people that are unhappy with their agent.
Yeah.
But the further that you drive it down, the less of the service that you're going to get.
Yeah.
And, there's a place for every type of model.
Yeah.
But actually the niche that we work in is somebody that wants a consultant. They want that concierge level of service. They want a safe and trusted pair of hands that know and understand what the seller needs.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part of the market that I've managed to work in. And, the best fit for me for that was with Fine and Country.
When you got into that market, what was your thought process? Because obviously, so when you were in Newman's, was it like in the resi part of the business, and then you took the step into the Fine and Country?
Yeah, so look, it's a good question. So if I go back to Newman's and the days at Newman's, we had really good business. We had a few different locations, one of which was my hometown in Leamington Spa. And there are 4 parts to the market as I see it. You've got the whole market, 0 to 100%. 0 to 75% is the mass market.
Yeah.
The top 25% is the upper quartile.
Yeah.
The top 10% is the prime,
and
the top 1% is the super prime. And people think super prime is restricted to central London and Manhattan. It's not. There's a super prime to Peterborough and Leamington Spa.
Yeah.
There is always the most expensive property. So we at Newman's, we were really great in the mass market, but we really struggled to get into the upper quartile. And, we used to put our pie chart with, how many properties we'd sold, and we were comfortable market leaders. And then there'd be a property that come onto the market. We think, well, why haven't they called us?
Yeah.
And it used to break my heart. And I think we'd be the best place to help them with that.
Yeah.
But the type of seller selling that type of property, they want to deal with a specialist that works in that part of the market. And it was only then when we partnered with Fine and Country that then we started to get calls. And immediately afterwards, we said, well, actually, we're going to distance ourselves from Newman's, and we're going to open Fine and Country and then specialise in that part of the market. And the rest is history.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, what do you find though, like with agents that they see a brand, let's call it Fine and Country for argument's sake, and they think once they've strapped that brand on, the rest is going to look after itself. When realistically, there's a hell of a lot of work that needs to be done. And you could be, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth. I'd love you to tell me what in your experience that is. It could probably take 3 to 5 years, realistically, of building that reputation in that market, because you have such traditional, long-standing agents in that marketplace who are maybe like Strutton Parker, Savills, those kind of places. So taking the brand and the assets and the license, for argument's sake, doesn't solve that predicament of getting those listings straight away.
Yeah, look, there are no silver bullets.
No, definitely not.
If you're out there thinking there is, you're going to be you're going to be sadly mistaken. And you named a few agents there. I don't think anybody has a divine right to sit at the top of the table.
No.
You will only achieve that through hard work, perseverance, innovation, adapting your working model, embracing new technologies, and all of those different things. And in terms of how long it takes. How long does it take to build trust within your market space so that people look? Now, you're absolutely right. And, if you look at Leamington Spa as an example, where we were one of the pioneers with Fine & Country, one of the first licenses in the country, and there's many other really good ones, but it took a while to carve that niche and actually to topple some of the bigger boys that have been doing it for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And their name was synonymous with that part of the market. So it did take time. However, you look at Fine & Country now, we've been recognised for 3 consecutive years as via YouGov as the most recommended brand.
Yeah.
So you can ride the tailcoats of some of the other locations' success, but even with that, it's still not going to be a success. And you could have 2 neighbouring licenses, one that embraces all the tools, does it really successful, and one a road away that actually they've got the brand, but they don't use it the right way. And unfortunately, they don't have the same degree of success. So the brand is critically important, but the people at the steering wheel are also really important.
That combination, isn't it?
Yeah, and recognising service standards and delivering upon them, making sure that they've got the right moral compass, working for their seller rather than for themselves. All of these things are critically important.